It's not just strategy. An edge in day trading thrives or dies by the trader behind it. Welcome to Trading Ascension, where the information guides you along the personal and spiritual growth journey toward profitable day trading. I'm Jason E., and in each episode, you'll discover practical self-development tools and transformative mindset practices to break through emotional blocks, mental noise, and self-sabotaging habits, so your mindset can finally support your edge. This show is for growth-minded day traders who want result-focused trading psychology and personal growth tools to sharpen their edge and decrease their emotional swings. If that's you, keep listening because... In today's episode, we're talking about how to build a mentally sustainable daily approach to trading that limits damage to your trading account, your psychology, and your emotions at those times when you reach a psychological threshold. To keep it 100, this is really a conversation about preventing, escaping, and recovering from trading hell, the hard times, and moving forward on the trading journey. Not because we're obsessed with the negative topics, which are, popular for creators, but because we just want to focus on what's real. Last week I talked about thresholds from the physics perspective. And so let me define thresholds. It's a point at which the input will overwhelm the system, right? And we're talking about the psychology of humans. Each person has a upper limit of how much they can handle coming from the environment, right? How much stimulus. When this threshold is exceeded, most people attempt to cope with the stress of being over this threshold through one or more dysfunctional feelings or behaviors. And let me ask you, would it be helpful for you to have an idea when you're about to go on tilt and make bad trading decisions, right? There's a lot of novice traders that are really good at telling you where the market's going, but remain clueless about where their psychology is going. And it's not just a problem that novice traders face, it's a problem we all face. I believe with just the layman's understanding of brain functions, the amygdala, which is known for threat detection, the insula, which helps us sense internal bodily states, and the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for planning future events and executive control. With just a small understanding there, we can be better equipped to master and know ourselves. I'm answering questions like, how can we recover from setbacks and get back on track? And when I say on track, right, I'm being very clear. I'm talking about a focused, unfiltered trading state. This conversation has a lot of pieces, and we're going to touch on some different angles of the same core issues. And we're going to do this in a way that actually moves you forward, not just feeling, better for a moment. This episode is going to be filled with helpful information, but at the end, I'm going to also give you 5 tips for psychological recovery from setbacks. If you've ever watched your account bleed out because you knew better, but you couldn't execute, if you're sick of the same emotional cycles, tilt, revenge tradings, quitting too early, forcing entries, if you can predict market moves perfectly, but can't, predict when you're sabotage yourself, this episode is for you. If you want to get some information to help you escape the frustration of knowing your edge, but watching it slip through your fingers, and you want to arrive at a focused, unfiltered trading state when you execute, almost like, not quite like, right? We're still human, but like a machine. If you want to better understand when and why you might start taking steps backwards so you can grow as a trader and a person, this episode is your playbook. A big pushback I hear about just personal development advice specifically is that if if it worked, why do they keep making content? Why does that guru have 40 videos on manifesting and, questions like that? And if I could only create one video right? As I was thinking about this question, that got you on track toward results, then this might be that video, right? We'll see where this goes. But outside of, setting up your trading plan, which we covered earlier in the season, this video has the gems you need to improve your trading psychology. Most traders, they hyper focus on entries and completely ignore the mindset patterns that quickly decide whether they'd follow that plan or blow it up, right? And if you have a plan, but you're not sure if you're going to follow it, it's not a great plan, right? It's at least not a useful plan. But at a deeper level, I've discovered larger cycles that play out in lives, seasons, if you will. And for me, although it was well documented, it wasn't until I zoomed out recently that I realized, every 90 days I'm subject to reverting and not back to square one, but just a few steps back into psychological safety. And here's the thing, yes, the patterns happen on a cycle, but that cycle, it wasn't directly tied to time. My own sabotage, it tricked me in a way that made it easy to creep up in the dark and put me in a headlock. Not only was there the illusion of time, right? Like, oh, it's coming to time, but also it could be the illusion of events, right? You may say I can only handle X trades daily, X green days, X months, then it hits, right? I revert back. The route to sabotage, it could be different. Fooling a trader into thinking that they're on a path that leads out of hell instead of directly into it. Maybe you've had an experience like me, right? Doing great for quite some time, then some sabotage pops up. Issues in your life outside of trading, and then you go on tilt. Perfect environment in situations outside of trading, and then still trading bad. Feeling great about life, then trading failure, right? Things going pretty well, and then failure, disappointment, and frustration, right? And you're like, man, I thought I was headed away from that. And I'm right back here. If the way we felt, was a true indicator of us reaching our goals and how long we can maintain consistency, all we have to do is worry about feeling good, right? That's not the game entirely, right? That's erroneous, thinking paths that lead us right into a trap. So we're having this conversation for more self-awareness, right? It's easy to avoid falling in a hole in the sidewalk if you see it, right? If you see it, it's easy. By the end of this episode, you'll have a simple framework, some ways that you might want to consider thinking daily, how to hold yourself accountable, how to prevent blowups, and how to recover fast when you slip. And this is just our honest, normal, common day trading conversation where you'll learn powerful perspectives and shifts with some few takeaways. Hopefully more balanced energy, right? As we expose some of the imbalances, things that we're hiding within ourselves, a more positive outlook on your upcoming weeks of trading, right? Awareness. Again, it's hard to fall in a hole that you see on the sidewalk, right? And then action steps, right? Things that you can implement immediately. So at the end, again, 5 specific tips for psychological recovery from setbacks that you can execute your gain, so you can execute your gain clearly, right? Through every threshold that you reach. And never, hopefully at a decreasing amount. I won't say never again, but at a decreasing amount, slow down how many times you have to watch an account bleed out from sabotage, right? That you didn't see coming. So let's open up by getting on the same page with some empowering perspective shifts. First off, we talked last week about trading being a personality, right? And it's a personality, but it's a performance craft. It's not a lottery ticket. Believing this stops you from thinking that adding to build up my margin account again or resetting my eval account will magically change the future results, because that's not true. There's an emotional addiction that you're lacking understanding. You have to change deliberately from the setback and after the setback, not just rush back in to erase it. Think about if it was losing a fight, right? When you wake up realizing you've been knocked out, right? Which is how it feels when you go on tilt, right? And the emotions fade, like, oh, I'm back. Would you say, coming back from that knockout, okay, let's fight again now, right? You got a rematch cause, but would you want to take it right then? Or would you take another camp, right? Prepare. Get ready for the big stage again. New approach, new arsenal, right? The answer is obvious, right? Another perspective. My job as a trader is to execute my edge, not predict every move. And this was one of the beasts that, I faced early in the career, because when you don't know, you want to know, right? You want to know more. And I always been, okay with not being smart. I embrace being coachable instead growing up, especially in sports, right? And I realize, people like to talk. So good listeners can learn a lot. And early in my career, I stopped going down the rabbit holes of trying to figure out every market move until just waiting for the perfect situation for my edge. I guess that I spoke to early in the show and on my path said we can be right or we can be profitable. So I had to stop trying to be right about what the market will do, right? Just to boost my ego of knowing it all. And I had to focus on my play, right? Not all plays. If it was possible to learn market movements, then Wall Street traders, like the veteran retail traders, they would just be entering all day. They'd be like, yep, know where it's going. I'm in. I know what's happening. I'm in again. But that's not how it works, right? Most people are waiting for a specific event to execute an edge. Outcome focus, right? Even in its sneaky form, it can be detrimental. And when I say sneaky form, that's when you say, right, when your actions lead to your goal, like it does when we set it up here, that can also be hindering. So here's an example, right? When I say, because I did X, X being a perfect action, it will equal Y, a certain outcome. So I'm kind of focused on X, but I'm still thinking about it yielding to Y. And that's attachment to the outcome still. And it does taint the energy of a single trade, right? So you have to let that question of, or equation play out over time, right? Not per single trade. Another powerful perspective we're going to start with today is stress is a signal to upgrade. It's not a verdict that you're broken. Losing, making bad decisions, reaching emotional extremes can seem like, dang, I'm broken as a person, right? It can feel personal, right? I failed, right? And then you might project it to the future. I'll never reach my goals, right? And we could ease that pain and the ego attacking stories that we tell ourselves by not attaching to those stories, negative or positive. Disappointment is very much tied to expectation. It's like going outside in the rain, expecting to stay dry. And then you're freaking out when you get wet. And when you think about it, it's not the rain. It's not the getting wet. It's the expectation to not get wet that's causing the pain in that situation. And this could be the same for traders, right? Just like wet to rain, losing is to trading. That sounds like one of those, cognitive tests or something you take. I've talked about this before. We can set up execution goals that are embedded, or we can set our goals. How can I say this? So we can set up a goal that is embedded in our execution and our action, right? That way we don't have to focus on it in the minute. But we do have to do still more extra work to attach from the expectation to make sure that we're flowing all our energy towards our process. Give in to your actions and your routine if you want a new level of trading without, with less emotional stress, right? More emotional freedom. Those three things alone can change your entire trading week. They reframe pressure as progress instead of punishment. And let's kill the myth, right? That the proper state of being might be found on your charts. The proper state of being, the feeling that you're chasing, can be found on the charts as a lie because it's found within. So we have to kill the mindset that another trade can grant us anything that we truly need at that moment emotionally. Don't chase emotional wins via the market, right? We have to bring that energy to the market so it can reflect it back to us. But when you want to, part of going on tilt is thinking the market is going to alleviate something within you. And a lot of times, as we'll talk about later, this is actually a process that's subconscious. So we may not know it's truly going on. So we have to start trying to give what you want to receive and detach from receiving altogether. And even if it's, like me and you say, because I follow my plan, I can expect. Nope. Just that small because that statement takes us off of execution. 100% focus on what you can control is the goal. Lock in on that, my friend. Just knowing that might help us stop. Remember Eddie Murphy, you guys, this is a dated reference. He said, pooking for nub in all the wrong places. Right? It was Saturday Night Live a long time ago. But looking for something in the wrong place, you'll never find it. So, pick one of those perspectives, carry it for you with this week. Let that be your mental North Star on the charts. And let's get into this, right? What's happening in this situation? Maybe you don't know this, and this will be enlightening for you because there's a reason we reach these thresholds. Tilt, we like to call it. And we'll talk about why we reach these thresholds in the first place, right? And I want you to understand it's not a character flaw. It's your nervous system doing its job, what it was designed to do, keeping you safe from what feels like a threat. When you push forward toward growth, right? Bigger accounts, more contracts, consistency, a certain level of accomplishments, your brain doesn't always see success. Neuroscience shows it often sees danger. And by understanding we're going on tilt because we're close to a new level of personal success that threatens the old success, knowing that we can frame this event differently. So we have a current identity, right? Who we subconsciously believe we are, what we're capable of, our stance on certain topics. And truth is, most of us didn't create this identity. It was programmed in us by early life caretakers and, events and the world structure of control. A lot of factors go into that. And this identity, it forms gradually through repeated experiences, right? Especially in what they call, our formative years, right? Childhood to early adulthood. And this reinforced by this neural wiring from habits, traumas, or just reinforcement events like, for us as traders, past trading losses, right? They might solidify a struggler self. In trading, it could solidify cycles of near misses, embedded subconscious patterns that clash with progress, all shaping our reality to fit our identity. And whatever identity we have now, no matter our conscious views of it, one of the mind's top priorities is continuity in this area, right? So as we struggle to become a better version of ourselves and a better trader, our mind's working for continuity of what is currently. So 3 parts of the brain work together to hold us to the current identity while holding us back from our trading goals. And when you start getting close to that goal, the sabotaging process might just kick in. And it might kick in with first threat detection. And you have to excuse me, but the the part of the brain, the amygdala. Some days it flows out. Some days it's like, blah. Especially on, early mornings. But that's the threat detection, right? I think you guys know what I'm talking about because this brain part is often talked about. Eons ago, the amygdala evolved as our brain's smoke detector. So it was rapidly scanning for predators and danger to ensure survival in the wild. Today, it flags unfamiliar winds as risky. Success threatens your familiarity, right? Not as a trader and being familiar with a struggling trader, if that's your identity, right? So it's treating change like a predator since it means unknown pressures, exposure, or failure risk, right? Like not wanting to fail in front of others or be cast out of the tribe. That's what the brain's thinking. So it protects the current identity by prioritizing emotional safety and being familiar or familiarity over growth. And it's viewing your old self as this survival baseline. And it's anticipating chaos like imposter syndrome or overwhelm from funded accounts, huge wins. And that alarm sends a message to the next relay team, right? Which is the body alarm, the insula. So the insula part of our psyche developed to monitor our internal body state. So it was helping early humans sense hunger, pain, or illness to stay alive long enough to thrive. So these internal threats are being observed. When threat information gets here, it grabs the amygdala signal, converting abstract fear into a physical unease. Things like a racing heart, gut knots, tension, making the discomfort, knocking over books in the back here, making discomfort impossible to ignore, right? And it's screaming, abort mission, return to equilibrium. Activated post-threat, it processes introception, right? And that's like translating fears. Could be like success exposing your old self. And this happens in body cues, tension, nausea, restlessness, somaticizing, which is expressing psychological distress through physical symptoms, right? So once here, right, this is an escalation of that threat. Once here, the need for safety becomes tangible, right? We cannot ignore it. We can feel it in our body. Something's wrong, right? And the alarms are going off. And your mind saying, the enemy has breached the perimeter. We're going down from within, right? It's not just an attack outside. We feel it inside. And then once the brains, this is the third section in this process, and this is all happening subconsciously within us. The brain's prefrontal cortex gets word that there's an alarm going off, that the chaos is more than a threat. It's an actual attack. So it has to launch the plan it's been trained to do. Has no choice. It's its job to execute under circumstances, and those circumstances are here. It will be damned if it doesn't do its part. Meanwhile, we're on the charts freaking out, trying not to acknowledge it while tightening our grip on our trading dreams. Then the prefrontal cortex, you see, it emerged in human evolution as an executive command center, planning hunts, making tools, delaying gratification for long-term gains. Overloaded, though, it reprioritizes, shelving your trading plans, right? Like, forget that. We're in an emergency. Putting that to the side for quick relief. Rationalizing impulsive moves like revenge trades as smart caution. Yanking you back to predictable losses that feel normal. It receives that amplified threat, right? Which is the amygdala alert, plus the insula's visceral discomfort, right? Putting those together. And then we're under stress. So it starts down regulating executive functions, right? Like planning and impulse control, creating just this hijack where it justifies the detour as a caution of realism, right? Like, hey, things are going on. We better play it safe. And it's reinforcing the cycle of consciously trying to move forward, then getting subconsciously pulled back into the old you. And you see it, like picture that. There's a trader. He's $200 from getting funded. Then bam, his brain hits the emergency brake. Admin yells, "Threat to who you know." Insula floods your body with panic vibes. The prefrontal cortex, right? The PFC whispers, better play it safe with that familiar loss. Boom. You start sabotaging. But knowing this crew lets you outsmart them next time, right? Breathe, recenter, and stick to your plan because you have that awareness. And this awareness matters, right? Because if you can predict moves, of the ES, 100 ticks. But if you can't see your own tilt coming, you're trading blind to your biggest edge killer. We have no control over this process once it starts. At best, we can alter when it's triggered as a prevention, or we can work on speedy recovery. Ignoring it isn't an option. Trading without facing yourself isn't a path to success. It's impossible. It's like living in an apartment and the mailman of the building is told to burn every package, but you're pretending that you're going to get that order to your door. You just keep placing orders, again on Amazon, and the package is never coming. There are strict instructions by the mail staff to not deliver that package. And so we have these strict instructions by our brains to maintain continuity with our identity. So we have to prevent this system from going off. We have to work on our identity, and we have to work on recovering from these explosions. So yes, consistent actions in trading progressively weaken psychological safety mechanisms by rewiring neural pathways, making new levels feel less threatening over time, right? You have to be consistent in taking these actions, right? We talked earlier in the season about writing down a game plan and sticking to it. In short, we have to chop down the tree one axe blow at a time. The key is to keep the axe sharp and to hit the same spot on the tree every single time. That means that we have to have this consistent input, repeated discipline trades, following rules despite discomfort. And this strengthens the prefrontal cortex regulation, gradually desensitizing that amygdala's threat response to milestones, because it's going to respond to milestones, right? Like funding thresholds or certain P&L days, right? This builds new habits that outcompete old sabotaging loops as consistency shifts identity. And you can shift from a struggling trader to a professional. And you can do it one blow at a time, right? Initially, safety mechanisms, they resist. But these small daily wins, journaling these entries, fixed risk sizes, they create evidence that change is safe, reducing the insula-driven physical unease and the PFC's overrides of the plan. Over weeks, this automation bypasses emotional hijacks, letting you sustain breakthroughs. When you stretch towards growth, several brain areas can activate that interpret change as risky, right? We've covered that. We understand that we cannot. Cannot what? We can't stop it. We can't stop this process once it starts. We cannot. So as a prevention measure, I have one key thing to help master the events and consistency. And look, when it comes to this, I don't know if I'm always clear here. So I want to owe longtime listeners an apology, because I always talk about the nuance, and this is one of the most important ones. And maybe we did. It's been a lot of shows, but I want to empower you to think for yourself. But maybe you were misled by me by the amount of tools we have, right? Or maybe you got stuck using more than one because of, change, right? Because we talked about that last week, right? There's different seasons when you want to use different tools. And let me be clear. The foundation is the success generator system, right? And your foundation should not change when we're talking about consistency. So there's a nuance here. There's using these tools, but these tools have to be used as parts, not overhauls of everything. Because we can view ourselves as almost as biological computers, right? And to get change, we must reprogram them. And when I think about my cycle that I realized, 3-month pattern of upheaval, a pattern of a new lifestyle getting thwarted. And instead of, piecing out what was working, I was reviving myself on a 90-day cycle instead of slightly adjusting. And just like a computer program, the input affects the output. And, I'm so thankful to have journals and data and be able to look back on the path with new eyes and see different things. If not, that information, those lessons will be lost forever. And for me personally, I know that I need to stick to the same routine outside of trading for longer than 90 days. And at first I didn't see the impact, right? If you've been following my advice and slowly, logging input and output, you should have a clear look back at what's working. You should know a lot of the correct pieces. So you need to take the time to put together the pieces that actually work. And sometimes you just know they work, right? You know when you should go to sleep, what you should eat for breakfast, what supplements are working, right? And if you don't, stay on that path of finding the right pieces. But for both paths, you need to lock into a solid routine for success. Now, from my experience, you need to run that system, programming for as long as possible. Slight tweaks, not all overhauls, right? Now, I'm not saying, you got to do the same workout all year or, the same morning routine. But you need to make sure that you're more scientific in your approach towards these pieces and changing them, right? Because that steady input creates the steady output or the data needed for small changes, not whole system changes, right? So I just want to be clear there and make sure that you're understanding what I'm telling you and we're not on different pages from the information I'm giving you and what I'm living in my life, right? So, for example, if you're tired in the AM, change the time you sleep, change the time you wake up. Don't change both at the same time, right? Like an experiment, limit the factors that can affect results and build off of what's working. Most importantly, make sure this routine has aspects of your future self in it. So you want to create parts of your routine by asking yourself questions like, who am I as the person who has reached my goals, right? Whatever your goal is. And then you're creating that lifestyle and you're starting to live it. And you're taking it one day at a time, but you don't have to stop when the 90-day mark is hit. One thing, I think I did a whole show to this because I talked about how you have to plan for what's happening after you reach a milestone, because early in the success generator system, you're going to start blowing through some of those goals. It's just like when you take on something new, you excel really fast. And for some traders, not all, they they grow really fast. They learn really fast up front. Now, that doesn't mean the results reflect it, but their ability to take on this new endeavor, right, has an early blessing in it. So the consistency is going to help. The consistency and new action is going to help reshape your brain. You may have days where you don't want to, get up early, work out, whatever's in your routine, right? You want a balanced routine. I think we probably should talk about the balanced success routines. Not today, though. But the upheaval won't be as bad as facing these demons in the financial realm, right? So, for example, getting up early is different from the pressure of trying to learn your entry. And the reason being is because the market induces certain emotions in people, right? And that may not be for everybody, but under the pressures of the market, sometimes this change and the safety mechanisms arise a little bit more directly than they do when you're just trying to change life routines, especially initially, right? It's easy to do something early in the path before the brain says, oh, hold on. We're threatening our identity here with this 7 days in a row of exercise. So this approach targets the brain directly. Consistency, working on neural pathways. And here are a few other tips that I'm using to help neuroplasticity as a solution. We have to keep a positive outlook on future events, right? It's not the most important thing. It's not the only thing, but it's a key piece of the puzzle. And, we also like to keep a positive attitude in the face of adversity, right? But at times we lose track of our goals. When that process kicks in, the light that shined the step ahead of us, it might go dark. And you're like, man, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't remember what the point was, right? Because the plan has been thrown out the window, hijacked, downregulated for safety. And at those times, we don't always react positively, right, to certain situations and stimulus. But it's important, to know what was triggering, the path that led to the trigger. And that's just important, is knowing how you reacted and what that says about you. If we can describe the actions we take, right, as actions separate and not describe ourselves, we can mend that gap a little bit more, right? If you can say I was acting undisciplined, right, we can seek awareness versus I'm undisciplined. When we talk about getting out of hell, right, and out of those dark training times, we're also having to talk about avoiding that hell. Not getting lulled into unconsciousness, right? Because there's traps. And, a few wins, you're too confident. A few losses, you're fearful. It almost happens that events can cause extreme disappointment, even when we don't know they are, right? The almost events, I guess a lot of times the almost events hurt the most. And when I say almost events, I mean like you almost hit the target, right? Almost timed the entry right. Those are traps. Those are possible triggers. You want to be aware of those. Unexpected events can be triggers. Tech issues, life issues, right? Like, dang, that popped up. But, we have to expect this unexpected in a way, not in a fearful way, but in a way that we want to protect our mental state. Rightful revenge is getting optimal. You can be spiteful by walking away. What about we make the habit of revenge trading, turn it into revenge resting, revenge shutting down? Oh man, I was so mad. I took that trade. I revenge shut down and walked away. I made a mistake and I was going on tilt. So I logged off for the day. I took a walk, right? But it's difficult once that process is going on in the brain. But there's tools that can help us recover so we can fight the good fight again. A few tools, right? I said I'd give you 5. Number 1 is mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, it increases gray matter in a part of our brain known as the hippocampus, right? Part of the brain is not important, but it reduces the amygdala's activity, lowering stress. So mindfulness and meditation, 10-minute daily sessions, right? Breathing, awareness, grounding techniques, things like that to counteract stress. Super helpful. Cognitive reframing, right? We're addressing the problem where the problem happens. So we can change thought patterns, and this will alter neural pathways, and this will reduce automatic negative responses. So we have to identify our challenges. We have to be aware of our negative thoughts. And when we journal, right, we want to log some of these things, but we also want to journal self-compassion. So when we go back and look at it, there's a better spin on the past because it's being viewed from the future. So we're not carrying baggage into the future is what I'm saying. So reflect on past successes to build confidence. I like to say, because we have to detach from our thoughts. You know, there's certain times of the day before sleep, certain things where you just know those thoughts are coming. And all I say sometimes, I see you're here, you're coming for me. Right? And I try not to get caught up in those stories. You're this, you're that, this and that, and this experience in the past and the future is going to be this, right? Oh, you coming for me, huh? Okay. Right? Because I can't say everyone. I don't know. Do you have negative thoughts? Right? Are there times where your brain doesn't seem like it's working on your side? Right? And it may seem like that because it's looking for threats to protect you, but it doesn't seem empowering at the moment. Number 3, physical activity, movement. And again, we're attacking the problem at the problem. So this movement, it promotes, and I should have wrote that word down, neurogenius in the hippocampus. I believe that's the process. That is the area. Basically, releases endorphins for mood and gives us a cognitive boost. So walking, any of the, Eastern arts, yoga, Tai Chi. I like Qigong, right? Movement-based mindfulness, especially if there's outdoor, right? These are activities for clarity. Hope that mic didn't pop there. I'm just banging on stuff today. I'm a little excited, man. I'm kind of talking with too much arm movement. So physical activity, it's helpful. Number 4, novel experiences and learning. Novel means just new, right? Things that are rare for you. And what this does is this stimulates neuroplasticity and it forms new neural connections. So you might want to embrace new habits, new hobbies, and this is novelty to brain rigid patterns, and it creates problem solving and cognitive flexibility, right? If you're on the same routine all the time, then all of a sudden you're doing something new. Your brain's like, we got to create some new pathways for this. Right. And then the last thing is building supporting relationships. And what this does when you interact with someone in a positive way, slippery slope, right? Got to find those positive people, those supportive people. And that doesn't mean you have to share, every aspect of the journey, but you just have to have these positive people around you. And what this does is it boosts oxytocin, boosts dopamine. It strengthens emotional resilience. So, if you could do things by getting with some friends, communication in groups, just showing gratitude towards loved ones can help. And the last thing we need to talk about, right? Because we're talking about recovering, preventing But these systems are happening because of a threat to our identity. How do we change our identity? The future self aspect of the success generator system, right? And we have to master these three main areas. And then we'll hit high level goal achievement. And there are three main triggers for our identity, right? And these are common events that fire up the current safety mechanism. And the good news is there's only three, major events to focus on for more awareness. So a lot of this is self-mastery, right? So this is what you want to be part of your identity. Self-mastery, right? What the self-mastery does is it's a deliberate identity upgrade from within, right? So we have to master ourselves by having a clear mental picture of our future self and looking at it from the point of what aspects does that person have that we're working on developing and developing those skills, right? If that person is reached your goal, what skills do they have? What personality do they have? What type of person are they have to have that in their life? And then we have to master market conditions and not predicting price. This is knowing what market conditions serve your edge. Early trading, or my early trading system, it offered a trading bot. And I tried it and it worked great in some days, but it bombed other days. And a friend had asked me like, hey, how's that bot going? I said, man, it's great in certain markets, bad in others, but I don't know when to deploy it so it hits. Right? And think about that. Because I was just thinking about this week. And think about you, right? Even a robot needed a specific condition to maximize its skill. And this is the same for your edge. So you want to gather data on the days to trade. And then you want to sit out of the market when it doesn't match. If you're a range trader and it's a trend day, you might want to consider, not live trading. Vice versa, right? If you're a trend trader and the day is ranging. Now, if you're early in trading, I always, make this difference. You have to get the experience, right? You might want to trade every day as you're working on your edge and seeing the market and learning. That's a you call, but when you're live trading, you want to match the conditions to your edge or stay out of the live fire. And then there's neutrality that we have to master. We have to have our goals rooted in the new trader identity, right? That way we can be being outcome focused and we can stay neutral towards the goals. Research shows that neutral framing, not hype, but just neutral framing. When I say hype, not like lying, but it quiets threats to centers like the amygdala, and it can cut the amount of self-sabotage in our trading. There's some benefits to neutral framing, right? It helps us focus on neutral goals, right? And when we focus on neutral goals, we want these to be process goals, right? So I execute 10 disciplined trades daily. It's a great affirmation, a great goal. And this has a way of working around the threat centers because it lowers arousal versus, the goal of, I'm crushing the funding, I'm going to make X amount, this and that, and all those things. The body's like, whoa, that's not who we are, man. So it keeps the prefrontal cortex dormant, right? It dilutes the threat capture, avoids the insula discomfort, right? The feelings in our body. And even sports psychology says process goals build calm confidence and helps us overcome boom and bust cycles, right? Where things are going great, then they're going bad, then they're going great. And we just keep bumping up against that identity and our body's saying nope. But those bumps are positive, right? I'm not saying we have to avoid these things, right? We can prevent them, not avoid them. We can recover for them. And now we're talking about changing our identity so that system is disrupted a little bit. But 3 tips, right? Who goes, right? I am a disciplined trader who risks 1% max. Not, I'm a disciplined trader that makes X amount a month, right? Not the result. What you can control, you're setting a goal for action. Repetition of doing these types of goals, saying these things, rewires self-perception, and it starves the old threats. So there's a process over milestones approach, right? And if you're journaling every session as a pro does, you can write these things down. New me, 3 daily identity wins, right? So you're tracking, right? What you don't track can't grow. You're tracking the path to success through process, through step-by-step chopping of the tree of the old version of you. I am a trader who walks away after 3 losses, right? It affirms a pro identity and it dulls the amygdala over time. And it gives us a neuroplasticity edge, right? Because the brain rewires via repetition, mindfulness, reframing, movement, and heightened emotion. So those novel experiences and connections, all of this put together with a focus on process, right? Who you are as you're performing can help heal and keep us away from the threat and those 3 parts of the brains coming up. So listen, legends. We kicked off this show with 3 perspectives, right? Trading is a performance craft, not a lottery, right? Our job is to execute edge, not to predict the market. And a stress signals upgrade, not that you're broken. You can pick one of those as your North Stars this week. And remember, the expectation can be a problem, right? It's raining outside. You go outside, you're going to get wet. The market's moving. If you're in the market, you're going to take a loss, right? So it's the expectation that's the problem, not the market itself, because that is what the market is. So then we cracked on, why thresholds, your nervous system's protecting the old identity. And we went through the system, and a lot of people talk about the reptilian brain and it's firing up, but I think we went into a lot of detail of what's actually happening, which can help with the awareness in us, thwarting the plans, because that amygdala just sniffs threats and what we perceive consciously is wins. Then the insula just floods your body with those avort vibes. Then the prefrontal cortex, it justifies a new plan. Oh, hey, man, we got a revenge trade. That's the best path for us. We got to blow this up out. That's the best path for us to get us back to safety. So we have to be able to read ourselves just like we read the market. Awareness is going to be our biggest edge. And then at times when we're trying to do that, still work on our identity, sometimes it just doesn't work. Right. And we have to face that head on and try to fight through it and recover from it and learn from it afterwards. And that's the prevention. But to help that, consistency is going to be the answer. Live your future self routine, right? Same sleep, eat, supplements over 90 days, right? Small tweaks, not system overhauls. Just chop down that tree. Blow by blow, safely. And then once you get out of that place, right? And if you can't prevent it, you have to work on recovery, right? So we talked about the 5 neuroplasticity tools for when those traps hit: mindfulness, breath, breaks, reframing, right? To avoid undisciplined action, and positive affirmations, right? When the mind says, oh, you're trash, we're not listening to it. We're moving our body, right? Remember, rightful revenge, we're walking away. Oh man, I went total revenge on the market, man, and I just took a walk. I went total revenge on the market, man, and closed the computer down, right? Make those our reactions. Because we're trying to lock in a new identity, right? We're trying to master ourselves, master the market, and master neutrality. So this week's mission, pick a few things to focus on your routine, lock in a routine and say, you know what? I'm going to run this routine for a few quarters here. And I'm going to pick my head up and I'm going to see where I'm at. Hope this was helpful. Here's to being the hero of your story. Thanks for listening.